And we're live. Look at that. Time for live stream, everybody. Today is our N10-008 Network Plus study group. In this first hour, when we get to the top of the hour, we got about 8.5 minutes. Before we get started, I will ask you questions from the CompTIA exam objectives. And then in the second hour, I'll take questions from the chat room. Got quite a bit to look at. Okay, we are recording down here. You can see my Cylons are going. We're recording on the YouTube up there. Cameras look good. I think we're in pretty good shape. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. Got a lot going on today. We got the live stream today. I've got a bunch of content. We've been writing content, I don't know, for months. We keep writing. We keep making. So I have the rest of my day all set up, all ready to go. Tyler in the chat room just passed the 1,002 for the A+ on Monday. Now A+ certified. Congratulations. That's got to feel good too. That's 2 exams you had to pass to earn that A+ certification. So well done. No, this is not for Security Plus. Is it? I hope it's not saying that it's for Security Plus. So let's go look at it. Nope, it clearly says N10-008 Network Plus. So I got the right one. Wasn't me this time. We can pause that guy. This is indeed the N10-008 Network Plus study group. Hello, downtown Houston. Hello, St. Vincent. Hi, everybody. We'll get going in about 7 minutes. Boom. Mark. We've got quite a bit. Would I recommend taking Network Plus for a first-year student? Well, I suppose if you're planning to get a job that would need Network Plus, or you're working in a program that is very focused on technology, Network Plus is a good one. Everything touches the network, right? So knowing more about the network will help you in all of IT. Of that, I am convinced. I wish we could force developers to take a networking course. I think that would, well, we would all be out of a job. What was I thinking? Erase that. Forget I said it. I didn't mean it. It was just something that went through my head for a moment. And then I realized that was, no. Oh, let's not do that. The N10-007 will be retiring in June. It is in June. So if your Network Plus exam is going to be for the N10-007, and I assure you there will be people taking the N10-007 exam until the very last day. So if you're working on it, you are in good company. This particular live stream will focus on the N10-008, which means everything in this live stream will be for the N10-008, and some of it may apply back to the N10-007. But you have 3 years of study group live stream archives to go through that will cover all of this on the N10-007. So we started the N10-008 live streams. When did we start them? Let's look. Let's look real quick, everybody. If we go out to my live stream planning, the Network Plus, the N10-008 started in November. So this is our 4th N10-008. That's relatively new. Everything before that, the 3 years before that, is N10-007. So you're covered. Either way, you are covered. I've got a lot to go through. If you are ever trying to find the right thing to study, you can't go wrong with Network Plus. I don't think you can. I think Network Plus, it should almost be the first one you take. I understand why A+ is really considered the first one you should take, and that's probably true. But the network stuff is so important. There actually is an enormous difference between the N10-007 and the N10-008. Let me give you the exact specs while I have this up. Nope, that's not the one I wanted to use. On the N10-008, let's look at the numbers. Let's do the numbers, everybody. N10-008, that would be Network Plus. That's correct. All the videos on the objectives for N10-008. There are 588 objectives on the N10-008. 235 of those are brand new. That means that 40%, 39.97%, 40% of the N10-008 is material that does not appear on the N10-007. Brand new. 40. That's a significant number. So if you're studying for the 007, you do not want to take the N10-008. You will be in trouble. You do not want to do that. 40. There's a lot. The A Plus is getting updated right now. I think we'll learn more about that next month, but it's similar numbers, similar changes. So these things, this technology doesn't really stick around very long. So that's pretty important. Tyler says, I've been watching the 008 videos, can't wrap my head around patch panels and 110 blocks. Can I go over them in the after show? Absolutely. Remind me in the after show, because I'll forget by then, Tyler. This is my problem. There's a lot of things that happen in my world between now and an hour from now. So, but I will absolutely cover those. I have extensive and painful knowledge about patch panels and 110 blocks. We can talk all about it. Do I have videos that explain telephony remote connectivity? I don't know what that means. So no, I guess I don't. What is telephony remote connectivity? I would like to know. It sounds like three words that probably don't quite go together on that. I don't know. No, the Network Plus N10-008 was available last year. So just so we're clear, the N10-008 has always, it's been available since September 15th of 2021. The 007 will retire in 2022. There's an overlap there between those. There's more than 45 videos for the 007. There's a lot more, I'm pretty sure. Well, let's see how many. Let's see exactly how many. On the 007 videos, is it only 45? Did I cut them up that much? It's been a long time since I made the 007 videos. 101 videos. There are 101. So they're actually more consolidated for the 008, where there are 85 videos. Yeah, I did combine quite a bit. I change stuff up all the time. You can't really look at the number of videos anyway, because I change things up all the time. That's what the important thing for those. And there are labs on my site too. You can always go look at the CompTIA's, their labs. Oh, we're almost ready to get started. Almost ready to get going. This is weird. Okay, let's get all of that going. The A Plus is getting retired. Do you have to wait for a new version to come out? The A Plus isn't going to retire anytime soon. I think August. That's my prediction. That's a long time before it retires. So let's get, do I have, yeah, I've got everything ready to go. We can get this set up. It's top of the hour. This is ready. Presentations. I think we should do a live stream, everybody. Let's get this thing started right now. Let's, nope, we don't need that one. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2022 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is our study group that covers all of the topics, or as many as we can fit, into an hour from the N10-008 Network Plus exam objectives. We have a lot to go through today. I have brand new questions for you. Every month is brand new questions. I write them brand new every month, so there'll be something new for us to go through. I have one from last month to get us started, and then everything else is brand new. I should be very clear when working through those. I have a lot of things on the list, so let's get through this first set. Some folks are still coming in. Let me remind you that we do this live stream, and you're able to answer the questions interactively during the session. You're able to do that by popping open a new browser window and visiting professormesser.com/QA. There will be a question waiting for you on that page. There is also an app you can get to answer the questions because, of course, there is. You need to download the Socrative Student app from your favorite app store. The Socrative Student app, there's also a Socrative Teacher app. You want the Socrative Student app. Socrative is the service that we use to do this. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is right here, Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER. And if you do all of that right, there will be a question waiting for you that asks, a network administrator has identified a number of errors associated with a WAN link. Which of the following would be the best way to test the router interface for potential problems? Is that ping, punch down tool, tone generator, loopback plug, or light meter? Think about that one. Lock in your answer by visiting the answer page, professormesser.com/QA. Please do not comment in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We'll figure this out as we go along. We got a lot to go through as we start stepping through the rest of the pieces of this. So I think that we should be able to find lots to go through with this question. We'll come back to this question in just a moment. Thanks for being here. We do one of these study groups for Network Plus every month. We also do A+ study groups and Security Plus study groups. There's always a live stream going on somewhere. You can find out more about that by visiting our website. You can, of course, go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We have new videos coming out all the time. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. I also have a weekly Network Plus Q&A, a pop quiz. You'll find that on Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. You can also find the same question, but with a pretty picture, over on Instagram on professormesser.com/Instagram. For those of you that have been studying Network Plus for a while, you may be studying the N10-007 version of the exam. This exam was released on March the 1st of 2018, and CompTIA has announced a retirement for the Network Plus certification for the N10-007 will be on June of 2022. So right now, we're in February. You still have plenty of time if you are studying that N10-007. And I recommend that if you have been studying for the N10-007, keep studying. Keep working to earn that certification. If you pass that certification before June, you become Network Plus certified, and you're certified for 3 years. So it's a good bonus there. That way you don't have to immediately stop what you're doing and shift over to a new version. The exam is 90 minutes long with a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer. The score that you need to earn is a 720 on a scale from 100 to 900. Every question's worth a different number of points. We aren't quite sure how that fits into the big scheme of things, but CompTIA doesn't really share their grading system. All you have to do is do the best you can and hope the number comes out to be more than 720. The exam itself consists of multiple choice-based questions, very similar to the one we just did, and performance-based questions, and we'll do a performance-based question next once we're through this. Now, as I mentioned in the pre-show, the 007 retiring on June 2022 means that CompTIA has introduced a new version of the Network Plus exam. Doesn't really matter which one you take. You pass either one of them, and you earn your Network Plus certification. But, of course, technology continues to change, and so every few years, CompTIA will update the questions on the exam so that you're being asked the most recent material. This is a version of the exam that was released on September 15th of 2021, so it's only been around a few months at this point. Well, that means the estimated retirement date for this version of the exam is March 2025. If you're watching this right now in 2022, you've got plenty of time to study for this exam. My objective, though, many people focus on maybe which one they should take, or they think about changing from one to the other. You don't have to, because it doesn't matter which exam you take, you earn exactly the same certification. So there's not a 007 certification. There's not a 008 certification. Those numbers describe the exam you're taking. When you pass the exam, you earn a Network Plus certification, and it doesn't have a version associated with it. So if you are still working towards your 007, keep doing that, because you have plenty of time and you earn exactly the same certification that everybody else is going to earn. This Network Plus cert never changes. If you want to get a list of the objectives, make sure you visit my website and use that link, professormesser.com/objectives. And of course, you can always say that you want more objectives on the CompTIA website. Go out there, go to your favorite search engine, go hunt for the CompTIA exam objectives. You'll be able to find those. There's plenty there to go through. Well, I would be remiss if I did not mention the Olaleyi Tunde. I probably did not do that right, and I apologize. With this super chat, a $49.99 super chat to kick off the study group. Very generous. Thank you so much. Olaleyi says, thank you, Prof, for all you do. I got a job with Microsoft as a network engineer. Your training made it possible. Your hard work made it possible. That is a great gig. I like the idea of being a network engineer because I used to be a network engineer. So that's very exciting. I love hearing stories like that. Congratulations on your job with Microsoft. As I always say, it's just the beginning. You think it's great now, just wait. It keeps getting better and better and better and better as things go along. Congratulations on that. Thank you for the super chat and your support. We appreciate that. It helps keep the lights on, helps keep this crazy experiment going. And best of luck with that new position. That's very exciting. For those of you that have been watching our videos, you know that all of our Network Plus videos are available online for free. You can watch every video. Everything is there. There's no shortened videos. There's nothing behind a paywall. You don't have to register. Just go out to YouTube, watch the videos. Go out to the Professor Messer website, watch the videos. There are some folks that would like to take the videos home with them. They would like to have them an offline version to be able to take around with them. You can do that by purchasing my Network Plus Success Bundle. I have video downloads. I have all of the videos in audio MP3 format. My course notes are there, my exam hacks ebook. There's some other things that we're planning to add to this in the future as well. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We also have a replay of this study group available immediately afterwards. A video replay is on YouTube. And then a few hours afterwards, usually, definitely the next day, I try to get the audio version of this study group posted as podcast. So you can find out more about that at professormesser.com/podcast. So it will just automatically download into your podcast listening program. It's a great one to use. You'll notice if you go about a day later onto YouTube, there will be YouTube video descriptions with timestamps for all these chapter marks. We're able to do this thanks to the work of Lori, my marketing manager. Everybody say hi to Lori. She is watching the chat go by because she's watching the replay of this so that she can get those timestamps and put them into the YouTube video description. Find out more on the YouTube side, have a look at the video description, and you can just click the timestamp and jump to exactly what you're looking for in the video, which I think can save a lot of time on these live events, especially if you're looking for a very particular thing. Find out more by checking the YouTube video description. Also let you know that when we aren't doing one of these live streams, we are all on Discord. So you can find us there. Go to professormesser.com/Discord. This is our 24/7 chat. I've got channels there for A+, for Network Plus, for Security Plus. A lot of folks will hang out at night and study together in a single chat group. Turn on the audio, share their screens. It's a great way to learn. Find out more at professormesser.com/Discord. I'll also remind you that you should not pay full price for your vouchers. If you go out to Pearson VUE and you buy your vouchers when you're registering for the exam, you're paying full price. But there are discounted vouchers available. Normally, you'd have to hunt around the internet, and there's coupon codes. You have to fight over a browser extension, and that's ridiculous. Why not go to a place where the discount is already applied? You don't have to have a discount code. You don't have to have a coupon. Simply go to professormesser.com/vouchers and purchase your voucher there. I have vouchers for all the CompTIA exams, including Network Plus right there, and all the others. So have a look at that. And if you purchase, not only is it discounted, as if that isn't enough, you get a free copy of my exam hacks ebook that can help you perhaps with some life hacks during the study process and some that you can use during the exam itself. These are hacks that I have accumulated over time, overtaking tens of certification exams in my career. And some of these hints and tips might help you as well. Give you a couple extra points on the exam that maybe you had not gotten before. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was, a network administrator has identified a number of errors associated with a WAN link. Which of the following would be the best way to test the router interface for potential problems? Would that be ping, punchdown tool, tone generator, loopback plug, or light meter? Well, let's see how you answered. If I show the results, you can see that we're a little torn. We're actually doing better than we did last month because this is our rewind question from last month's study group. At least this time, we have a two-way tie for first. Before, I think we had a four-way tie for first. So we're getting better at this. 46% of you said ping because ping that's the answer for everything, isn't it? I would think it would be. And 47% said loopback plug. 4% say tone generator. 3% say light meter. And 0% say punch down tool. Well, we can really go with the two main ones. Ping is 46%, loopback plug 47%. It's almost a 50-50. I will tell you that if you are working towards this problem, you may run into this in the real world where you have an interface on a device and you're not sure if it's the interface, if it's the network connection, maybe it's a fiber or copper. There's so many different components that it could be. So one of the things you should do is test the interface of the device. And the best way to test the interface of the device is with a loopback plug. A loopback plug is used to send data out one part of the interface, and then it loops back and goes right back into the interface again. So it effectively is able to send a certain type of data out and then examine if it's getting exactly that data back. If it does not get that data back on the serial port, on an Ethernet connection, even on fiber, it's very useful. If it doesn't get a connection back, then you are going to be really looking at this interface now as perhaps having a problem because it's not going anywhere. It's simply going out a plug and coming right back in again. And if you're receiving something different than what you've sent, there might really be a problem with that interface, that physical interface. One thing to keep in mind, although the name sounds like maybe it could be a crossover cable, this is not a crossover cable. This loops everything back in, which is a single connection. It's not connecting two devices together. This is not a crossover cable. This means that our answer then is loopback plug. 47% of you chose loopback plug. That is the right answer. 47% of you said ping. Now, we were looking to test the router interface for potential problems. Ping basically tells you one of two things. Is it up and talking? Is it not up and talking? That's it. That's your 1 and 2. That doesn't really help very much, does it? Ping doesn't really give you a lot of nuance. It just tells you if a device happens to respond back when you yell at it. That's it. It really doesn't tell you how well it's receiving the data. It doesn't tell you if maybe some of the pings are working and some of them aren't. It simply tells you if it's able to send or receive an echo message back and forth. The key with the loopback plug is the combination. You're using some diagnostic software to send this out the loopback plug. You're sending usually a lot of data out that plug and receiving a lot of data back, and you're really able to analyze this interface and send a lot of information and see how well it reacts. You can't do that with ping. Doesn't really help very much if you want to test the actual interface. In this case, the question did ask what would be the best way to test the interface, and loopback plug provides a much better way to test the interface than ping could ever provide. 4% of you said tone generator. That's usually used in conjunction with an inductive probe to find the end of a cable. It doesn't really help you test interfaces. Punch-down tools don't help at all with testing interfaces. Nobody answered punch-down tool anyway. And light meters are very good to determine if a piece of fiber is working properly, but it doesn't help you understand if a router interface is working properly. In this case, the best possible way to test this interface for potential problems is indeed the D option, loopback plug. That is the one we were looking for. That's our question from last month. I think many of you remembered what this one might be. This would be kind of useful. The errors, I would say the errors you would get on this WAN link, maybe you're getting a lot of CRC errors. That's a very, very common WAN link serial connection issue. Like the number of CRC errors has really spiked up. Why is it doing that? Well, a cyclical redundancy check error indicates that the signal's not being received properly. Well, what could cause that? Everything. A solar flare, a bad cable, a bad fiber, a bad interface. There's lots of things that could go wrong. So this helps you narrow down where the problems might actually be. Using that loopback plug. Very common thing to use over wide area network links. And if you work at all with a wide area network provider, that's the first thing they do. Well, let's put your interface into loopback and let's run some tests. We'll run a BERT test, a bit error rate test, B-E-R-T. Run that BERT test. We'll run that for an hour. And if we get no errors, then we know it's not us, which is really what the internet service provider is really trying to do, is prove it isn't them. Kind of push it back on you. Happens all the time, and loopbacks just become a normal part of life. You'll definitely run one or two of these in some time in your career to be, or even more, to be able to do that. Let's keep this moving now. That was our rewind question from last month. Let's do some new questions. And the first new question we do every month is a performance-based question. This is a question on your exam. You get about a handful of these when you start the exam. So not everything on your exam is going to be a multiple choice-based question like this one. There will also be questions on your exam that are not multiple choice. They could be fill in the blank. They could put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might be a matching question. You might have a question that is asking you to put things in a particular order, maybe from fastest to slowest, for example. I have one for you today that is more of a visual question. Normally this would be matching, but I made it a little bit harder. I made this a fill in the blank question. So I apologize already for the folks that are on the podcast listening to the audio only version. Our performance-based question of the month is a visual one. I have 4 pictures on the screen of these 4 connectors. So I would like you to name these 4 connectors, A, B, C, and D. And as I mentioned, I didn't provide you with a list to match from. This is a fill in the blank. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to that link at professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. You should recognize these, right? There are 4 connectors there. I won't even say some are copper, some are fiber. That's the best I can tell you. I'm not going to give you any hints to figure that out. You'll be able to figure it out. Get some coffee while you're thinking over these 4 interfaces to figure out what they might be. Now, if you've worked with these in the past, these should be relatively straightforward, but some of these are almost unusual to find. They have to be a really specific situation, I think. If you are trying to figure out interfaces, this is just 4 of them. You know, there's a lot of interfaces listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So make sure that you're familiar with everything they ask of you in those objectives. It becomes very important that you know everything that could possibly pop up on the exam. I'm just giving you some examples. And I think on the exam, I don't think there are any fill-in-the-blank questions on the exam. At least not at the moment. As we are sitting here today in February 2022, I don't think there's any of those on the exam. So I think that one of the things that many people will do is they'll go through those exam objectives and they'll use them as a checklist. I think that's a great way to do it because there's just so much you have to know and so many different interfaces. On the actual exam, I think they would probably do this as matching. So there's 4 pictures there. They might give you 7 connections, and then you match 4 of them. There'd be 3 left over at the end. Things like that. We'll figure out what those are. These are not bad. This is not a difficult, incredibly difficult, but they are listed in the exam objectives, and some of these you just don't run into like at home. You would really need to be in a corporate environment or just learn based on the things you need to know from the exam objectives. Let's see how you did with these. A number of you have locked in your answers. A number of you are busy Googling. It's not going to help you very much. I promise you, we'll figure it out to have that there. As always, please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. Let's step through each one of these one at a time and see if we know what these connectors happen to be. Let's start with the very first one to figure out what these are. The first one on our list, this would be something that you would probably find in your home. That looks like a connector for a cable television or a cable modem. It's exactly what it is. That is what we call an F connector. An F, the letter after E, the one before G, that's the one, the F connector. And it is a twist-on connector. It's a threaded connector, so that when you thread it onto the cable connection, it's not going to accidentally fall off of that. So a threaded connector on this F connector, F. The F connector just has the term F. I don't know that it actually stands for anything. I don't believe it does. I think it was probably the connector they created after the E connector and just before the G connector, if I had to guess. There are a number of people who said, oh, it stands for frequency, which makes no sense either. So I don't think that one would work either. But it is indeed an F connector. Let's keep going with that. The next on our list is a fiber connector. That fiber connector is one. It's kind of difficult to see there, but if you have a look in detail, that is an MTRJ connector. It stands for Mechanical Transfer Register Jack, which is not as important as knowing that's an MTRJ connection. These are much smaller connectors than some of the other fiber connectors you would find. And if you're familiar with putting 9-10-inch racks together and putting equipment in those 9-10-inch racks, there's only so much room available in those 19 inches. And if you can get smaller interfaces, you can fit more interfaces into a device. More interfaces in a device tends to mean that this device costs more money, which is great for the people making the equipment. So they want to squeeze in as many possible MTRJ or smaller connectors as they can. These are really something that might be very useful as you're putting in fiber. Speaking of fiber, there's another one. The third one on our list, clearly a fiber connection. Let's see what kind of fiber connection that one is. It's an SC connector, subscriber connector, technically speaking. Although you'll notice that the connections themselves are kind of squared off. So a lot of people will call this the square connector. Although that's not entirely true, because this one's more of a rectangle, I guess. But we don't call it a rectangle connector. The R for rectangle, I don't know. We're kind of reaching now. Let's see if that's going to work. SC, though, is the name of this connector. Subscriber connector is the official term for that connector type. So SC is the one that you're looking for the third one. So we have one that's left, this last one on our list, probably the other one that you might find in your house, maybe your parents' house, maybe your grandparents' house. I think we see fewer of these days in our homes because that is an RJ11 connection. That is a registered jack type 11. This is a 6-position and usually 2 conductor. You can even see the 2 red and green cables in this particular connector, commonly used for analog telephone, traditional POTS lines, the plain old telephone system POTS. Although, if you're running something like a DSL connection in your home, this is the cable that's bringing in the DSL line. So DSL, certainly a large number of connections in the United States and around the world, and RJ11 is still the cable that we use to plug into that DSL modem. So pretty useful. So why do we have, from the chat room, a great question from Tyler, why do we have these 6 positions, but we're only using 2 of the conductors? Well, because the RJ11 technically describes the cable type, connection type, the connector size, and it describes how the connector is wired. For example, there is an RJ14 that uses the same physical connector, but it has 2 additional connections inside of it. So it actually happens to be a 6 position 4 conductor is an RJ14. If you saw them next to each other, and in fact, you may even have some RJ14 wired somewhere, we just tend to call them RJ11 because we tend to just say, oh, that's an RJ11 connector. We think that's the physical layout, the physical connector type is RJ11, but that's not entirely true. It's really a combination of the physical connection and the wires within it that call it an RJ11. So you may even find some wires out there that have 4 conductors inside. In rare cases, you might have one that has 6. I don't think there's any practical use for one that has 6, but I'll bet there's a standard that includes 6 conductors inside that 6 position connector. We just don't see it very often. So RJ11 is extremely common. ISDN used RJ11 as well. ISDN was a standard phone line connection coming in. They ran digital signals over, so that's RJ11. Usually on a DSL modem, I think I just had a DSL modem. I was doing some pictures. Did I erase it? Did I delete it? Did I nuke it from my system? I might have. I had a picture that I had set up in here. No, here it is. So here, for example, oh, this is a really good shot of this since we're talking about it. So here is an RJ11 connection on, this is a DSL modem. So this DSL modem has the digital signal from the ISP is coming into this DSL line, and that's an RJ11. And you'll notice it's a little bit smaller than the RJ45 on this side because the other side of the modem is an Ethernet connection that you can use to plug in either your router or equipment that's on your local network. Now, this one also has a USB connection. Some of the older DSL connections would have a USB out that will plug into your computer, and that's how you received the signal because not everyone had an Ethernet jack on their computer. This goes back a while when we were first rolling out DSL. Now everything seems to have an Ethernet connection, but you could plug in USB and receive that DSL signal on your USB connection on your computer. Crazy that we used to be able to do that. So very, very nice to have that connection. You can see the big difference between an RJ11 and an RJ45 type connector. Very different. They're similar but different to have those there. We'll have to see how that works. And those are our 4 answers. The first was an F connector. The second one is an MTRJ, the mechanical transfer register jack. The third was an SC, subscriber connector or square connector. I just can't get away from that. And then lastly, RJ11, the register jack type 11. So you've got a lot to choose from there. I think as I look through the answers, most of you did really well with this one. We were looking for connector types, not cable types. So copper, fiber, fiber, copper is not a good answer. That wasn't what we were looking for. We were looking for the actual connector on those. But if you didn't get it right, that's okay. Now you know what that connector looks like. You know how it's used. You know what people would do with that. That really is the most important part. Getting a question wrong during these study groups is exactly when you would like to get the question wrong because you can learn from that and be ready for your exam once that's ready to go. Let's do another question. We're going to shift gears back into our multiple choice questions. This next multiple choice based question is listed here. How does a network device determine if a specific packet is the start of a new traffic flow? Would that be thanks to TCP flags, MTU size, SSID broadcasts, DNS record, or QoS? How does a network device determine if a specific packet is the start of a new traffic flow? Is that TCP flags, MTU size, SSID broadcasts, DNS record, or QoS? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's right there on your screen. That's the answer. Go to that page, and you can answer, lock in your answer right there. Some of you are pondering this one. A lot of more people, I notice, are answering this one faster. I'm watching the numbers accumulate in this one. So a lot of us think we really know this one. We're locking it in right there. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in that answer. Let's see how we do with this one. So I think if you are someone working in networking, This is something that happens constantly. I don't want to give too much away, but obviously we're starting new traffic flows across the network all the time. A single web page is a traffic flow. Connecting to a different web page is a different traffic flow. Connecting to a file share to transfer files is another traffic flow. In fact, every time you transfer a file, it may be a different traffic flow depending on the protocol that you're using. So the technologies that we use on our network, our devices, our switches, our routers, our firewalls, they all need to know when these new traffic flows are starting up because there are some significant things to look for inside of the packet. They need to know where to send this traffic. They need to understand how to protect, limit access to the data going across the network. So this might be what you would use. Let's see how we do. With this one, how does a network device determine if a specific packet is the start of a new traffic flow? Is it TCP flags, MTU size, SSID broadcasts, DNS record, or QoS? Let's see how you answered. We can see that 71% of you say it's TCP flags. Be interesting to see how we came up with that. 13% of us say it's MTU size is what we would use. 4%, 5%, and 7% chose SSID broadcasts, DNS record, and QoS respectively, which means they probably are not the right answers with those single digits. In this case, this is really an N10-008 question because on the N10-008, you are specifically asked to know about TCP flags. If you ever look at a protocol decode of a frame of traffic going across your network that contains IP, you'll probably have inside of that, especially if it's a TCP flow, a number of flags. There's flags under the IP section, there's flags under TCP, there's flags under UDP. But when we are setting up a traffic flow, especially with TCP, there is a specific bit, a single one gets turned on inside of this entire traffic flow that is able to set things like a SYN bit, SYN. So if you happen to see in the flags section of the TCP protocol that one of those bits is set to 1, the next to last bit of the flags byte or byte and a half is set to 1, then the SYN is set. So you know that that is how it is looking at all of those. Hopefully that's one that you are familiar with. If you've ever looked at this, if you are not, make sure you download Wireshark, capture some traffic, go through the traffic. I think it's really going to help if you're someone who's really trying to break down what is really happening on the wire. How are we sending traffic between all these devices? It is remarkable what you will see inside of that Wireshark protocol decode. This is a great way to determine whether you're synchronizing or beginning a flow, you are resetting a connection, you're finishing the connection, getting the last packet. A lot of detail in the protocol decode. The protocol decode basically tells you everything. If you've ever looked at an application that's performing badly and somebody says, this application is slow, go fix it, the first thing you should do is a packet decode. Grab the packets. It will tell you everything you need to know. It's like magic. The more you know about reading those packets, the better of a network technologist you will be. And indeed, TCP flags didn't really fool many people with that one. That is the right answer. 71% of you answered TCP flags. 13% of you chose MTU size, the maximum transmission unit size, which is important on our networks to have the proper MTU set. That's something that's usually set automatically using the protocols that are running across the network. But the MTU doesn't really help you understand if a particular packet is the beginning of a new traffic flow. Doesn't tell you anything about it. So that's not going to help you. 4% SSID broadcasts are used by wireless devices to announce the name of the wireless network. That has nothing to do with packets beginning a new traffic flow. DNS records are very useful for either telling you the IP address of a fully qualified domain name or the reverse of that, or a number of other things as well. Those can be found under a DNS, but DNS records will not tell you or help you know when a new traffic flow might be. And QoS, quality of service, Very useful for managing applications and setting priorities of applications on your network. But QoS won't tell you if a specific packet is the start of a new traffic flow. The only way to do that is to have a look at the TCP flags. You can find that in the protocol decode. Those TCP flags will tell you a lot about what's going on. That was answer A. 72% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. I've got more questions here. Next question on our list asks, which link state routing protocol would be the best choice for a large internal network? Would it be OSPF, BGP, EIGRP, BPDU, or RIP? Which link state routing protocol would be the best choice for a large internal network? Would that be OSPF, BGP, EIGRP, BPDU, or RAP, or what we call RIP in the industry? Now you need to know your routing protocols. If you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in that answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Knowing how certain dynamic routing protocols are used and when they might be used can be very helpful, especially if you are planning, designing, or troubleshooting a local area network, and in some cases, a wide area network. You know, in wide area networks, we tended to kind of focus on static routing, but there are times on a wide area network where dynamic routes can be very, very useful. Having that automated functionality to tell all of the other devices where routes might be can be really, really useful. So this is one where knowing those routing protocols, how they are used and how they are categorized can be pretty important when you are looking at a network or designing a new network, which as a network professional, you will certainly be doing. Let's see how we do with this one. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in that answer. There was a question earlier in the chat room about getting a continuing education unit credit. I'll be talking sometime in this first hour about that. Keep listening out for that if you would like to earn a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU in this particular live stream, or even afterwards. If you're watching this on a replay, you can also earn a CEU. We'll talk more about that sometime in this first hour. Let's see how we did with this one. Which link state routing protocol would be the best choice for a large internal network? Would that be OSPF, BGP, EIGRP, BPDU, or RIP? Let's show the results. 46% of you, about half of you, say OSPF. 24% of you say EIGRP is the right answer. 16% said BGP. 5% said BPDU. And 8% said RIP. Now, there's a number of these that we can pull off the list to begin with. But before we do that, let's talk about link state routing protocols, a very specific kind of routing protocol. Just as the name implies, it's a routing protocol that talks about whether a particular source can reach a particular destination. That's the real key, is understanding, is the link up or is the link not up? It's got to be one of those. So this routing protocol keeps track of what links are up and what links are not up and creates a set of routes based on that information. So let's have a look at understanding this. In fact, some of these links, by the way, are fast links. They might be high-speed connections. It might be low-speed connections. But we need something that can, of course, adjust when things change and perhaps even adjust as the network becomes larger and larger and larger. One very common link state routing protocol that's used on an internal network, an internal gateway protocol, an IGP, you may see that referred to, is OSPF. OSPF is a very common link state routing protocol. It is extremely scalable. It's extremely complex, but it is a very, very powerful link state routing protocol. Finding an expert in OSPF is difficult. Finding people who believe they are an expert in OSPF is very easy. But OSPF, if you go out and look at the RFP for OSPF, or RFC rather, for OSPF. It is enormous. If you were to print it out, it would just be an enormous book to read through. And there are indeed many books written on just OSPF. It is a remarkable protocol, very powerful, lots of flexibility, implemented in different ways depending on what you are using, but can do a lot of things being available for that. So OSPF is your answer on this one. 46% of you chose OSPF. That is the right answer. BGP, commonly used as an external gateway protocol, an EGP, not commonly used for an internal network. In fact, almost never used on an internal network. I've never seen BGP used on an internal network. It could be if you wanted to run it somehow, but not something you would use internally. That's not what BGP is designed for. EIGRP is technically not a link state routing protocol, and it is a common protocol to see used on Cisco type equipment, but EIGRP is not the one to choose here because we were looking specifically for link state. EIGRP tends, I know that Cisco recategorizes what EIGRP is every few years, it seems. It used to be a hybrid protocol. Now it's not. Now they keep changing exactly where it is, but they have not said that it's link state because EIGRP is clearly not only solely a link state routing protocol. BPDUs are the bridge protocol data units commonly used at layer 2 for switches to communicate to each other and send information relating to spanning tree protocol. Spanning tree protocol and layer 2 has nothing to do with routing, which all happens at layer 3, so that's not the right answer either. And then RIP, the Routing Information Protocol, a very useful protocol, very common to see it on devices, but does not scale very well. And not solely a link state routing protocol either, although it does do a good job with link state. RIP is not the answer we're looking for. The thing that if you've got a large network, you need a scalable, dynamic routing protocol, and you don't want to be kind of focused on EIGRP. You need something perhaps even more flexible. OSPF is a great option. Have a look at that one. OSPF is the answer we were looking for, and 47% of you got that one absolutely right. RIP used to be, and RIP version 1 did use broadcasts, and if you had a large network, it would send more broadcasts. So there were times where broadcast storms were a concern with RIP. RIP v2 uses multicast, not quite the same problem. Different set of problems with multicast, but not quite the same. The problem with RIP and RIP v2 is more about convergence and scalability. It doesn't scale to be very large because you have all these multicasts and or broadcasts being sent across the network. And secondly, when a change occurs, it takes some time for RIP to recognize that a change happened. So it could take even a minute, maybe 2, to finally have RIP catch up with itself with the default settings. So that's why I think a number of people would choose something a little faster, a little more modern, a little bit better designed for scalability. OSPF fits that perfectly. That is a right answer. OSPF, 47% chose that one. Well, you can tell already, people in the chat room talking about what the right answer would be for some of these. You can see that the questions we've had already are from all over the place. There's so much information on the N10-008. What I did, of course, was create an entire course that contained everything you would need to know to pass this exam. But of course, not everybody has time to read through or watch the 93 videos, 14 hours of content, and coverage of all of these different topics: subnetting, encryption, wireless, troubleshooting, command line functions. Network Plus has almost everything inside of it. So what I did was take everything that was in the videos and I put them in a set of course notes. These are my N10-008 course notes, including the text, the charts, the graphics, the details. It's all here. You can find it in my course notes. Extensive information in my course notes. The N10-008 is a bigger Network Plus exam than previous versions, and that's why if we look at the number of what are we up to? 76 pages in here. Just tons of information, full color. There's not only a digital version you can purchase, that digital edition, there's also this physical edition that you can purchase. And the physical edition is a great way to be able to not only have a physical version, but you get the digital version for free. So you have it no matter what. You've got coverage in being able to find the things you are looking for. I think that's a lot of detail. If you're somebody who's trying to find the information associated with Network Plus and you're just having a hard time keeping up with the videos, it's a great way to find exactly what you're looking for all in one single place. Incredibly useful. Find out more about it. Go to professormesser.com/NPCN. Let's fit in some more questions. Next on our list is a question that asks, which of the following would be the best way to block file transfers containing sensitive customer information? Would that be AUP, DLP, BYOD, EULA, or IPS? Which of the following would be the best way to block file transfers containing sensitive customer information? Would that be AUP, DLP, BYOD, EULA, or IPS? All of these are real things. I did not make up these abbreviations. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Plenty to find there. Have a look as you step through. See if you're familiar with these. And if you don't know what one of these abbreviations happens to be, make a note of it so that later on you can go back and have a look at what these might be. You know, there's a abbreviation you don't know. This would be a great way to do it. Maybe this would be one you're familiar with as well. The idea is to really understand what you're working with here. And again, of course, please no hints in the chat room. Please no comments or answers in the chat room either. We'll figure out the details as we step through this. I think there's a lot to go through. This is one that you may be asked about. I know as a network professional, we don't often run into security issues, but every part of IT has its own role to play as it's associated with security. So someone who manages the desktops will be in charge of desktop security. Someone who manages maybe overall firewalls, and those firewalls will be the security team, but the network team has their own set of security tasks that have to be considered. Obviously, the network is what connects all of these devices together, so security becomes an incredibly important part of this. And of course, there's an entire domain on the Network Plus exam about security, just as there is an entire domain or section of a domain on the A+ exam dealing with security. So same thing here. See if you're familiar with some of these topics. I think whenever you start going through this and working through the details, I think that knowing these abbreviations might allow you to answer some of these questions a little bit easier. Although I tell people, don't spend your time memorizing abbreviations. Spend some extra time memorizing the abbreviation and then understanding when it would be used. I think that would be a pretty important thing as we step through this. Let's look at your answers on this one. The question was, which of the following would be the best way to block file transfers containing sensitive customer information? Would that be AUP, DLP, BYOD, EULA, or IPS? And if we show the results, you can see that 54% of you chose DLP, 27% of you chose IPS, 10% chose AUP. So from a triple digit perspective, we have 3 answers that we can put into that category. 6% of you chose EULA, 3% of you chose BYOD. So let's have a look at what the correct answer might be if we're trying to block any file transfers that might have credit card numbers, social security numbers, or some other type of sensitive information. Then we need to have some type of system set up for data loss prevention, DLP. Data loss prevention is kind of a broad term that describes the strategy for limiting the transfer of the sensitive information. Data loss prevention, DLP, is very commonly used on servers. There can be a process running software-based DLP. It can be used on network devices. There might be standalone DLP appliances on a network, or there may be DLP functionality built into the next generation firewall that you're using that is able to recognize social security numbers and block those file transfers built into the firewall that you're already using. We don't usually think of firewalls as also being a DLP device, but these days firewalls do everything. They're an IPS, they're a DLP, they're a cloud-based malware detection device, and they're a firewall. Lastly, maybe firstly, but they are indeed a firewall with so much more in it. The DLP itself is able to take policies, look for data coming through the network, and if it identifies anything that is sensitive or that could match the configuration that is put into the DLP device, then it will block that traffic from being transferred across the network. DLP is the right answer. If you chose that, answer B, the data loss prevention, you got that one absolutely right. If you are someone who is trying to block known vulnerabilities, if you have on your network a series of database servers and you want to be sure someone doesn't try to use some type of SQL injection, knowing that, you would use something like an intrusion prevention system or an IPS, which, again, another one of those features now just sort of built into your firewall. We used to buy standalone IPS devices. Usually don't do that anymore. We are able to really integrate those signatures and do it in real time on our next generation firewalls. We have 10% that say it's an AUP. If you're someone who is starting with an organization, you would have a document. Usually it's an employee handbook that gives you an acceptable use policy. It explains to you how this technology can be used appropriately on the corporate network. And perhaps it sometimes even tells you how it could not be used appropriately. So it tells you what the appropriateness of using these devices might be. That would be an AUP. That doesn't help transfer or block transfers of sensitive customer information. We have EULA, an end-user licensing agreement, is what you would agree to. That's the thing you don't read when you install a new piece of software. But if you're in a corporate environment, turns out the people buying the software read it very closely because these are the terms that legally determine what you're able to do with the software. That's an end-user license agreement. And lastly, a BYOD, only 3% of you chose bring your own device. That's when you are asked to bring your mobile phone, and the company will use your mobile phone. They usually will carve out a little partition on the mobile phone for use of the corporate data, so that the corporation doesn't have to buy a device for everybody since you're already walking around with one anyway. This also means you don't have to carry around multiple devices. You can use the one that you use all the time. That is BYOD, bring your own device. In this case, the only thing that would block file transfers containing sensitive customer information is the data loss prevention device or software or system. 55% of you chose that one. That is the right answer. And if you chose B, you got that one absolutely correct. If you're somebody who is watching this video either live or on a replay for continuing education unit credit, you can get 1 hour of a webinar category CEU by following these instructions to the letter. Yeah, well, maybe close to the letter, because there's a process I use for getting this information back to you. What you want to do is go to the Professor Messer website. At the top or bottom of that page is a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. It will ask for your name, your email address. On the subject line, please put February 2022 Network Plus study group or something close to that. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, 3 words, data loss prevention. Not the abbreviation. I want all 3 of those words, data loss prevention, the ones that are right there. Data loss prevention. And then if you wanted to put anything else in the body of that message, I do read through every single one of these. I'm not able to respond back to all of them, but I do read through every single one. If you do all of those things right, you follow those instructions, I will send you back sometime in the next week an email that certifies that you were here to watch this 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Very quickly, again, go to the Professor Messer website, go to the top or the bottom of the site, click the Contact Us link, put your name, email address, put that this is the Network Plus February 2022 study group, and then the super secret code word of the month, data loss prevention. That is the super secret code words of the month, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. I know it's top of the hour. Let's do one more question, though. We're going to squeeze another one in here. And I don't know if you're really going to like this, but we're going to do it anyway. The question asks, which security strategy involves the use of physical, technical, and administrative controls? Is it honeypots, the CIA triad, role-based access control, zero trust, or defense in depth? Which security strategy involves the use of physical, technical, and administrative controls? Is it honeypots, CIA triad, role-based access control, zero trust, or defense in depth? All real things. Again, all things you should know from the CompTIA exam objectives, but only one really fits what we're asking for in this question. See if you happen to know. If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Be a good one. Yeah, we are kind of going out on a tough one here, aren't we? The policy questions, to me, always tend to be the harder ones. The technical questions I can decipher. And my brain works better with the technical questions. These policy questions, well, there are policy questions on the exam. So this is one you certainly need to step through. And if you go through each one of those answers, you should be able to figure out exactly what we are looking for. See how we go through all of that. See if you know what it is. These are all important strategies. Honeypot, CIA triad, role-based access control, zero trust, defense in depth, they all have their place. In fact, most environments will have combinations of those in place. They don't already. Another good one to work through. See if you know. This is really key, is understanding some of these higher level policy terms. So if you can go through this list and go, I know what a honeypot is, this is what it is, and explain to yourself or someone else, this is what a honeypot is and what it does. This is what the CIA triad is. This is what role-based access control does. This is what zero trust provides. This is what defense in depth is. You should be able to parse this one out, I think. You may be able to do that. See if you got that answer. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you did with this one. Which security strategy involves the use of physical, technical, and administrative controls? Is it honeypots, CIA triad, role-based access control, zero trust, or defense in depth? And we're a little torn on this one. 40% of us say it's defense in depth. 22% say it's role-based access control. 19% say CIA triad. We've got 12% that said zero trust. That's 4 answers with double digits this time through. Only 6% of you said honeypots. Well, if you're someone who's trying to put together a security strategy, you know that it's never one thing. You need to be sure that you, of course, have some good firewalls. But the firewalls aren't going to block somebody from getting into the data center if the door's open. If you don't have a policy that dictates how people are to get access to the data center, then you have another problem. So you got to think about the physical controls. You got to think about the administrative controls, and not just my favorite controls, the technical controls. So that's the key, is really understanding what direction to go. When you're trying to put all of this together, though, you need a set of administrative controls and a security policy. You need physical controls to prevent somebody access to a particular area, and you need those technical controls. Then you need to do something like implement defense in depth. That is what we're trying to do, is to be able to create controls that will cover the doors, the locks, the access to a system. You want to be able to have a technical control, have the firewall in place. If you're finding that you've got a lot of people transferring information that could be considered sensitive. Maybe you need DLP. All of those are what you would work through. And then lastly, you need some policies that determine how you manage all of this and how it's implemented. All of those together with the defense in depth is where you would focus. And indeed, if you're putting together physical, technical, and administrative controls, that's exactly what you've built, is defense in depth. If you answered E, 43% of you got that defense in depth. Absolutely correct. 23% of you said a role-based access control. And role-based access control is very common to find if you are in the administrative group, then you have a certain type of role. If you're a manager, maybe you're in the manager's group. If you're in the marketing department, you're in the marketing group. Those are role-based access control type methods to be, or at least things that you can use to implement role-based access control. But they themselves don't have a scope across the physical or the administrative. It's really more about the technical when you talk about implementing a role-based access control. 18% of you said CIA triad, which really describes an overarching strategy for security in general. And it's so broad, this description of CIA triad, that it really doesn't specifically point to physical, technical, and administrative. Although those are three things, those are not the three parts of the CIA triad. So I have a whole video on those strategies that include the CIA triad, and I highly recommend you look at those because there's certainly a set of strategies you need to know about that are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. 11% of you said zero trust. Zero trust is exactly what the name implies. Trust nobody and nothing on your network. That if you're accessing another device, that device doesn't trust you, you don't trust that device. There needs to be a tight control over what you would use to finally allow both sides to trust each other. The idea is that we therefore would limit the scope of malware or worms or other types of malicious software on the network, because the malicious software is naturally untrusted. So if you have zero trust, you could effectively block that software from running on your system because you simply don't trust it. And until it is trusted, it doesn't run on your system. And then lastly, 6% of you said honeypots. Everybody loves a honeypot, even on Wednesday. So honeypots are very useful for understanding how do the hackers and bad guys get into our system and what do they do once they're there. It is really a technical control for security. It doesn't have a physical or administrative aspect to it. Still very useful to have, and sometimes fun to have your own honeypot to see what the bad guys are doing. Always something you should be very careful, though, if you're planning to set up a honeypot, because you are effectively inviting the attackers into your network. So not something everybody should do, but certainly a valuable tool for the security professional. For those of you trying to figure out physical, technical, administrative, and put them all together, obviously defense in depth is the right answer. Answer E, 42% of you got that one absolutely correct. That is, I know we're at top of the hour. Let's sneak one more in. What do you think? We'll get one more question in here. Zero trust is not really related to being passwordless. If anything, zero trust requires more security controls, not fewer. Maybe you're thinking of single sign-on, which is definitely more of a passwordless, or at least single-use password functionality. Let's do one more. I've got one more on this list. This one asks this question. A network administrator has just sent a ping to a mail server on the local IP subnet. Which of the following would show the MAC address of the mail server? Would it be ifconfig, dig, arp, route, or netstat? A network administrator just sent a ping to a mail server on the local IP subnet. Which of the following would show the MAC address of the mail server? It's obviously written from the perspective of where we are. Ifconfig, dig, arp, route, or netstat. If you think you know the answer, I should probably put up the link. There it is. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Lock in this last answer. Let's see how we do with this one. What, nobody got my Wednesday reference? This makes me a little sad. Maybe you did. You just didn't put it in the chat. I'm going to think that in my mind, in my head, will think that that's really what happened. Have a look at this question. This is one you may even have found yourself doing on your own network, is sending a ping to a device and then thinking, okay, what's the MAC address of that device? How do we do that? You would do something to be able to see without somehow getting up from your desk, walking over to that device. You know, you're doing it from this local device. Let's see this one. See if you happen to know what this one is. This is one, as a network administrator, this is an incredibly useful function as well. We'll talk more about this in just a moment. You'll do this all the time for this. I have found myself doing this one a lot, especially when, I'm not even going to tell you anymore. I'll tell you more about it once we get through the question. Let's see how we did. Not a lot of people answering this one. We're trying to figure it out. I'm watching the numbers go up. Okay, suddenly we got a flurry of people locking it in. So let's get the answer. The question again, a network administrator just sent a ping to a mail server on the local IP subnet. Which of the following would show the MAC address of the mail server? Would that be ifconfig, dig, ARP, route, or netstat? Let's see how the results look. 57% of you said it would be ARP. Is that even a real thing, ARP? We'll find out in a moment. 20% of you say it's ifconfig. 10% said netstat. 9% said dig. And 4% said route. Well, if you're trying to find the MAC address of a remote device, not your MAC address, the MAC address of that one over across the network, then you probably will want to use something like the Address Resolution Protocol, or ARP. If you ever wanted to see what the list of MAC addresses was on your local subnet that are associated with the IP addresses that you already know, then you'll want to run something like ARP. So if you were on your Windows machine, your Linux device, pop open a command line right now, and this won't hurt anything. It'll just show you the contents of the Address Resolution Protocol cache. Type in ARP-A. It'll show you your local ARP table, and you'll see of the devices you have communicated to recently on your local subnet. This has a limited time frame, usually a couple of minutes. So you're communicating to that device, and the IP address and MAC address are stored in a cache on your local machine, and you can see that cache by typing ARP-A. This is done all the time for people doing network management, network troubleshooting. Let's say, for example, that you are trying to ping a Windows device on your local subnet. Maybe this mail server is a Windows device. Now, for those of you familiar with Windows, at least recently, you know that the local firewall, the Windows Defender firewall that's in Windows, by default prevents a ping from being answered. It will not respond to pings. But the device does respond to ARP requests. And as we know, when you first try to ping a device, the first thing that happens is an ARP request is sent out, an ARP response is received with the MAC address of that device, and then the actual ping is sent. So if you haven't talked to that device recently, there's actually a lot more going on behind the scenes than you may have realized. So the ARP is always going to complete. Nothing blocks the ARP. If you blocked an ARP, then the device would just never communicate on the network. So ARP is always there. Even if that Windows device has the firewall turned on and it is not responding to pings, you could try pinging the device. You would see that the ping did not receive a response, all 4 times. And it says, sorry, 0% ping replies were seen. Nothing happened. We weren't able to communicate the device. But if you then perform an ARP-A, and you'll notice if the device is actually on the network, there will be a MAC address listed next to the IP address you just pinged. So although it didn't respond to your ping, we can see that it did respond to our ARP request, which can give us more information about, is that device really on the network or not? So even if ping doesn't work, think of this as a sort of a sneaky ping. That doesn't sound right. But think of it as a way to understand the device is at least talking to me. It's at least on the network. It's at least communicating. So now I can make more inferences and troubleshooting of that device using the Address Resolution Protocol. Pretty nice to have that there. And indeed, ARP is the right answer. 59% of you're able to see the MAC address of that remote device on that local subnet. So you also, ifconfig would have been great if we were on that device. If you run an ifconfig on your local machine, you're looking at your local MAC address. You're not looking at the MAC address of the device located across the network. So ifconfig would not be a good answer for this. It would only be useful if you were actually on the mail server directly, or if you connected to the mail server. That's not what we did. We were on our local machine sending a ping across the network. Ifconfig would not show us the MAC address of the mail server. It would show us the MAC address of our local device, assuming that I guess you're running Linux or Mac OS on that machine. Maybe you've got a Mac OS device because you're the network administrator and you're not going to use Windows because that's because. We can have. I look forward to your cards and letters. 9% said Netstat. Netstat would certainly tell us the IP addresses communicating back and forth over the network. Netstat by default does not show us any MAC address information. 8% of us said Dig. Dig is great for querying a DNS server, but DNS servers also don't tell you anything about the MAC address of a remote device. And Route is great to be able to understand what the routing table might be on your local machine, or to create or remove static routes, but it doesn't tell you anything about MAC addresses of a remote device. The only choice here, the best choice, the only one that made any sense, was C, the address resolution protocol. 60% of you got that one absolutely right, and you were spot on. That is the right answer. That's the one you should choose. ARP becomes a very useful troubleshooting tool whenever you're trying to figure out what's happening on the network. Now, we've also got a lot more to cover. We only covered so much in this hour of Q&A. There's an entire exam objective document that has every single topic you need to know for this exam. If you don't have a copy of these exam objectives, make sure you get them. They're free. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. Use the link there to jump over to the CompTIA website and download those objectives. Incredibly valuable. If you know everything in this list, then you'll pass your exam. I can practically guarantee that, because knowing every bullet that's in this list, understanding how to explain to someone else every bullet that's in this list, means that you're ready to take the exam, and you're probably going to be just fine going through. If you know everything in this list, you are going to be just fine. There's going to be no problem with this. Now, before I show this next slide, I actually need to make a change because these dates are not correct for the next event. I always tell people, maybe you can watch, I'll just do this in real time. Why block it? So here's my slide for March, but this slide is not correct for March. In actuality, I believe it's actually like this. There we go. I had to move everything up a week in March. So there you go. We're editing in real time. This happens all the time in my world, though. The next Network Plus study group will be on March 16th. There will be March the 1st and 3rd are my A Plus study groups. March the 9th is Network Plus, and March 16th is Security Plus. I am making changes to this schedule all the time. If you think you would like to keep up with when the next live event might be, or you'd like to attend one of our live events, go to the calendar. I always keep the calendar up to date. Even if my slideware isn't up to date, the calendar always is. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. You can also check the events calendar on Discord. I also update those at the same time. That is one of the best ways to really understand what's going on. I think if you're ever working through and trying to understand when the next event happens, always check the calendar, because my schedule tends to change sometimes dramatically. Make sure you're familiar with those at professormesser.com/calendar. In the chat room, will I be making an updated version for 008? There's been an updated version of my course available for 008 that's been available for months. So the updated version's already been created. So I will not be creating another one. We only need the one. There only needs to be one single N10-008 exam. Well, that takes us to the end of the first hour of our study group. But stick around. We've got an after show for you where you ask me the questions. So I stop asking questions. I'll just take questions from you. We'll go through all the details. Don't forget about my success bundle. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess And of course, if you're planning your exam, don't forget about the discounted vouchers available at professormesser.com/vouchers and get your free copy of my exam hacks ebook. And don't forget to follow us on the YouTube, on the Twitter, on the Instagram. You type in professormesser.com/ the name of the social media you would like to find me on, /YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram. And if you enjoyed this first hour of the study group, I would love it if you could click that thumbs up. We'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Something you can do for free actually helps a lot with the things that we're doing on YouTube. So I appreciate you for clicking that thumbs up for this. Thanks for being here. Stick around for the second hour. We'll have our after show in just a moment. Thanks for joining us on this first hour of the Network Plus Study Group. Well, there we go. And we're back. Now we can set up for the second part of the study group. I thought we did pretty good with those questions. Went through quite a few in a very short period of time. Let's have a look at the rest of these. There we go. I need to change around some things on my side so that you will know where to put some questions in. We'll do that right there. There's the link. Now, if you're watching this video live on YouTube, this is the YouTube chat. So if you're there on YouTube, you already see a chat go by. That's the one I'm watching. If you're on my website, then you're probably at professormesser.com/live, which also has the same chat. It's the exact same chat. So it doesn't matter where you are. It's one chat room. And I see everything there. All the pieces are available for you to be able to break those down. Plenty to step through. I'll take questions from the chat room. If you want to put anything in there, it doesn't have to be about Network Plus. It can really be about anything. But we'll talk about the details of some of the things you're walking through. So yes, just to follow up on Jeff's question, all of my N10-008 content has been created and is posted on the website. In fact, if you go to professormesser.com, I can probably pull up a screen of this. There we go. And right there at the top, you'll see there's an N10-007 training and N10-008 training. Can't see it very well. There it is. So you can go to either one of those. Both are there because some people are still taking their N10-007. It does not retire until June. Some people are jumping over to the N10-008, which is fine too. Either one. You can't go wrong with those. So feel free to have a look at both of those and pick the one that's right for you. Make sure you only study from the one that matches the version of the exam you're planning to take. Pretty important. So that's it. So in fact, that was the question Carl even says in the chat room. So can I pass the N10-007 if I'm studying for the N10-008? Probably not, because the N10-07 exam objectives are different than the N10-008 exam objectives. In fact, the N10-008, 40% of that exam is new topics that are not found on the 007. So if you study for the N10-008 and then you go in to take the 007, you'll find questions there on things you did not study for, and you'll fail. So don't do that. Can you buy practice exam questions for the 7 and 8? Not yet, but later this year, we hope to publish some practice exams for those. And there's other things you could do. In the meantime, for example, if you go out to the Professor Messer website, I'll give you some additional links because I know a lot of people are asking about those. So on my website, if you go down to the N10-008 training and you choose the study recommendations right there, and you have to go through, I guess, an ad on my screen popping up. These study resources include things like ebooks. There's the CompTIA official Network Plus study guide. What happened to my plug-in there? There it is. There it is. It's just slow coming up on my machine. I've got the N10-008 CertMaster Learn. Some of you like labs. I have labs out here on the N10-008 interactive pack. There's labs available. I have a video there that you can step through. In fact, if I click the interactive pack, it might come up and look a little bit better. There's a better screenshot of that. I have a whole video demo I did of those so you could see what the CompTIA labs are about. Let me see if I can, you can't see me talking there. I'm going to remove me from that. No, I'm not. There we go. So that video will step you through all of the labs, and I'll describe to you how they work. That's kind of nice to be able to have that. And for those of you that ask questions also from the website, let me also show you, because I think ultimately our question was about practice questions. There's also a practice test pack out here for the N10-008 on the website. So there's some options there. I'm going to create another set of practice exams too, because you can't have enough practice exams. So more practice exams are pretty useful. So I will have those available out there. Those are all on my website under the Network Plus Study resources, depending on which version you're planning to take. Question also in the chat room. We'll come right back to the patch panels and blocks. I did see your question. Thanks for that, Tyler. Question in the chat room. Will employers look down? Will they look down upon you with your mere N10-007 certification? Will they require you to get an N10-008? The employers have no idea which version of the exam you took. There is not a Network Plus version. So when you are Network Plus certified, you're just Network Plus certified. In fact, you could have taken your Network Plus exam 10 years ago, and you've simply been renewing it every 3 years. You are just as Network Plus certified as someone who passed the N10-008 today. You've all earned the same cert. If you take the N10-007 exam and pass it, you're Network Plus certified. If you take the N10-008 exam and pass it, you're Network Plus certified. In fact, you have the same certification. The certification doesn't have a version number on it. It's not called a 007 Network Plus or a 008 Network Plus. There is no such thing. It is simply Network Plus. And employers really don't care. They do not care. The only time I've seen an employer care is if they were hiring a trainer for a particular version of the exam. Of course, obviously, you would need to be trained on that particular version of the exam. We're not talking about trainers. We're talking about, am I doing something wrong by taking the 007 before it retires? Oh, no. If anything, taking the 007 is the smarter move. There are years of content available on the internet. There are video courses. There are many more books available for the 007 than 008. There are many more practice questions available for the 007 than there are the 008, just because it's been out for longer. There's more material to study from. So if you were playing the odds, the 007 probably might give you a little bit more of an advantage. However, the 008 has been out now since September. There's lots of books available for the 008. Maybe not as many for the 007, but you're not going to read all of them, right? You just need to read one of them, or two of them. So there's plenty of books available for the 8. There are other study materials available for the 8. We just saw them. We just stepped through a number of them. So there's books, there's study packs, there's labs, there's Q&A. There's lots of stuff available for the 008. It's not like it's a wasteland. It's not like it's a desert. There's plenty of content. So in my mind, you really can't go wrong either way. I think you're in really good shape. So if you're already studying for the 007, keep studying for that. If you're already studying for the 008, keep studying for that. Both are going to be good choices. So as I mentioned, you just can't go wrong. That's the way to do it. Let's talk about patch panels. Let's talk about punch down blocks, where these are used, how they're used. We got lots to go through. So let's start with a room of data, and I'm going to pull up my presentation that has these punch down blocks inside of it. If I can find it. Is it under cable management? It's one of these, right? I'm just going to have to keep going through my searches. This is how it usually works for me. It is called a video on cable management, where we talk about punch down blocks. Specifically, the punch down block you'll commonly see, and there's a lot in the N10-008, but here is one. I know I've got this in, I'm not in presenter mode here intentionally, just so I can see your chat go by, because it usually makes this full screen on both sides. But this is the same slides I use for the video. This is from the cable management presentation, which is the N10-008 section 1.3, the 5th video on there. One of the challenges we have is we have all these desks that are out on the floor, and we have to somehow connect our switch that's in a switch room or in a closet or in a data center has to somehow connect to all of those different devices out there in these desks. Now, the desks rarely move. Now, of course, there are moves, adds, and changes. I understand some people move all the time, but the desks, usually when you set up a floor, they don't really move around a lot. That network drop is right there at that desk. That network drop will always be at that desk until the time when you decide to maybe get rid of the entire desk. That may be the time that it changes. Most of the time when you wire up these rooms, you're wiring all of these up. You're putting a wire from someone's desk under the floor or above the ceiling all the way back into that closet. Now, in the closet, you need some way to keep all of these wires organized. So you need some type of punch down block where all the wires come in, maybe from all the desks, and then you have all of these set up and wired permanently, effectively onto the wall of that room. Here's a close-up of this. So these wires, this is the front side of it. I need a shot of the back side. I don't have one. But all these wires are coming in. Well, this is a good one. All the wires are coming in from these desks, and you're punching them down into these punch-down blocks. Now, one of the things that you'll see, this is the top of, or the bottom of the block. Usually there's another piece you put over this that then would allow you to connect up to your switch on the other side. Pretty useful to have. A good example of maybe of one that has RJ45 on one side. So here's the connections from all of the desks. They're being punched down. And then on the other side of this are RJ45 connectors. That's another type of punch down block. Incredibly important because you usually run the wire from the person's desk to the closet, and that's it. That wire never, ever moves again. So you can have the wire, and if you're ever troubleshooting a network, you know that one of the most common problems you run into is the wiring. That somebody has punched a wire through, they have cut the wire, the connector is loose, something's wrong with the wire. So your key is to never touch the wires or touch them as little as possible. So if you can set up this run to the punch down block, lock it in, it's on the wall, now you never have to touch that part of the wire again. The only thing you would have to touch is from the punch down block to your switch, because occasionally there will be times where you need to move someone to a different interface on a switch, but you're only moving one side of that connection. So punch down blocks, as being that middleman, allow you to have the flexibility to move things around within the closet, but not touch these long runs of wire to have it there. Incredibly useful. So this is what you would see on a normal, modern network, is all of these wires coming into the punch down block. So in fact, you rarely see an RJ45 connector until you finally plug into the switch that's on the inside of the closet. Pretty useful to have that punch down block there. That's when you would, of course, need to set up or use some cable management. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of cables in these rooms. And the punch down block also allows you to keep things very neat, very organized, very clear where the wires are going. Kind of helps this as well. Punch down blocks, if you go into any data center, go to the back of the room, on the wall, there's just a huge wall of wires all going into punch down blocks. They really do help you lay everything out, organize where your wiring is, and really be able to find an individual wire whenever you need to. Find it very easily. Incredibly useful to have that there. The punch down blocks that you will commonly see in the US are usually 110 blocks, but there are other blocks from the N10-008 exam objectives like Crone blocks, Bix blocks, and others. These must be used, and there are some of these that are popular in other countries, but I would imagine there are certain environments where you will see more of one type than the other. For example, the Bix was created by Northern Telecom, so you'll probably see that more in the Northern Telecom areas than anywhere else. So punch downs are great. In fact, RJ45 connections on a panel are much more difficult to manage than a punch down block. Wiring is so much easier to work with when it's a single wire, to have that there. Is the label part of the block? Well, the area to put the label in is part of the block. That label that's in the back and the label that's in the front is certainly one, and people will label it different ways. Label it with the drop number, label it with a punch down block number. Just depends on how you're organized in your environment and how you want to work with those punch down blocks. It's one that makes it very easy because if somebody leaves a desk, they now have a different office, they leave, somebody else sits down, and you have to move them to a different switch. You don't have to touch the punch down block. You don't have to touch anything with the run. You simply go to the switch and move the connector and you're finished. Very, very simple from a wire management perspective. Incredibly useful and an important part of the exam objectives too. In fact, I was surprised in the exam objectives, they added more punch down blocks into the list. So you used to have to know a 66 block and a 110 block. Now you have to know the BIX block. Now you have to know the Chrome block. So pretty useful to know those because you may run into them. One of the things about networking, it's sort of a universal truth, is you plug these things in and they will sit there for years, a very, very, very long time. Infrastructure doesn't tend to change. So, or it takes much longer to change than you would probably expect. Put it that way. That's where I would focus if I was working on cabling, knowing where those wires are going, knowing how the punch down blocks are designed, knowing where that wire happens to be connected is going to be an important part of your troubleshooting. So make sure you're familiar with punch down blocks. It's going to be critical if you're trying to troubleshoot a problem, because it might be a problem on someone's desk out on the floor. All right, where is that in this room? You know, how did that wire get into this room and where is it? And you can't always do a toner and with a probe to try to find the end of it. That doesn't always work perfectly. So understanding where the wiring is going is going to be a critical part of your troubleshooting and your network management in general. Might help you as you step through those. Let's keep going with questions from the chat room. I want to plug in one more thing here, if you will bear with me a moment, and we'll step through some of these other pieces. I think I've got some other technologies to work through. I know I don't have anything there. Other questions from the chat room. Let's keep scanning through and work through these pieces of it. Question. One of the things, there was a question earlier about punch down blocks and RJ45. I think the real key, RJ45 takes so long to use. It takes so long to crimp an RJ45 connection. The punch down blocks are so fast because there's no connector. You put the wires where they're supposed to be, punch, 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 punch. That's one connector. You're done. It's literally that fast. The folks that become very, very good at punch down, having that speed is important when you're working with thousands of network drops. You don't have time to sit there and manually put on thousands of RJ45 connectors because you never know how long that connection is going to be. So that's where I would always tell people, focus on speed and efficiency. It's another good reason for a punch down block. I've got punch down blocks in my I call it my data center. That's in the other room, actually a closet with a 19-inch rack inside of it. And that data center, I have two punch down blocks, one that's coming from another run from my house, because the studio we have here is not connected to my house. That's why you never hear the dogs barking, I guess. That's by design. So I have a punch down block coming from the house, and there's a connector in there so that I can then connect it to other devices on this side of the network. And I've got another punch down block that is on my rack itself because I'm always working in a lab. I'm always moving some things around. So I try to pre-wire everything, and then I'm able to easily connect to those devices along the way. It makes it a little bit simpler when I'm working with other equipment. Maybe a bit of overkill, but I'm just so used to having that flexibility with the punch down blocks that I try to use it everywhere. Yeah, we use punch down blocks for copper telephone lines as well all the time. Usually we're using the same type just because it's easier that way to have the same type. But there are, in fact, in that same presentation, let me pull up a picture of which ones were those? I think I've even lost the presentation already. That didn't take long, right? Cable management. There we go. So in that same presentation, I didn't show the 66 block. That's the one that's commonly seen on the older analog voice communication. So you would probably be using that 66 block. Although if it's an environment where you just have the whole wall is already set up with blocks, then you're probably using a 110 block also for both data and voice, just because you don't have to have separate blocks. It's so much easier, just one single block for everything. And it covers everything you would plug in with those block connections. So we talked enough about punch down blocks? I think we have. I think we've gone down that world of connectivity enough for those. It can be kind of a challenge keeping track of all the blocks if you've never had to deal with them before, but it's effectively it becomes easier and easier as you walk in. It gets to a point where you walk in a place, you're working with an environment, and everybody's got the same punch down block set up in every data center. It's almost universal. You'll see it everywhere with those. Okay, let's keep this moving. I've got some others to step through. Let's have a look at this one. I don't know that particular, so kind of search for those. I think we had an N10-007 question come up. That might be worthwhile to have a look at. Stand by while I load up those. Here we go. One of the things that you'll find a lot on the network is you are constantly trying to keep applications from becoming overwhelming on the network. And there are certain applications that will need a higher priority than others. And so folks in the chat room have been talking about quality of service. Now, quality of service is a broad term. It just means we are managing applications and their priorities so that certain applications will have a higher priority than others. For example, if you're using a voice over IP application, that voice over IP application probably has a higher priority than a browser on the same device, because browsers can deal with delay. In fact, you may not even notice there's delay when you're using a browser, but you absolutely notice delay if you're on an interactive voice over IP call. So that's why you'll often see people use different forms of prioritization or different forms of QoS that are implemented in different ways. So when somebody says turn on QoS, that doesn't tell you exactly what they're trying to do. All they're really saying is turn on some type of application prioritization. But there's many ways to prioritize an app. For example, you might have a next-gen firewall. Your next-gen firewall might have inside of it, along with all the other things we've already talked about, it may have a way to set certain types of quality of service inside the firewall itself. That's something that's done kind of proprietary to that firewall. It's not following any type of standardization associated with that. If you ever find somebody who is working towards setting prioritization at layer 2 or layer 3, and they're probably using different technologies. Layer 2 technologies would be something like class of service. On a switch, you can configure, at least in a trunk scenario, you can configure a class of service. So everything you're sending across a trunk has prioritization. That may be a useful place to provide that prioritization on your network. It's not a common place because we don't commonly trunk all of our traffic between switches. Your application may not use a trunk connection. And in those cases, you may need to move up to layer 3 and prioritize based on information that's within your IP packet. Inside the IPv4 header are certain bits called diffserv bits, differentiated services. And you can assign different bits to that, send that traffic out. And if there is another device on the network that is able to manage traffic based on the information of those bits, like a router, like a switch, usually a router, but a layer 3 switch perhaps, that is the code or the information that it's looking for within the packet, and to be able to set a priority for this particular IP data. There's also another field in the IP header called a DSCP header field, there's a differentiated services code point that's often used with or alternatively to a diff serve. The type of QoS is going to depend on the strategy your organization has chosen to be able to prioritize this application. Different organizations use different strategies. In fact, you may not use any of these. You may decide we're going to use the prioritization built into the firewall that doesn't use COS, it doesn't use diffserv, it doesn't use a DSCP as part of that diffserv to be able to set the priority. Instead, it sets it within the firewall and manages certain buckets within the firewall to set that prioritization. As it turns out, the 008, I don't think diffserv is in the 008, is it? Someone can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I think that's the case. If you're studying for the 008, you're wondering, why is he talking about QoS? I don't think it goes into that level of detail. I'm trying to remember. It's been a number of months at this point, but I think that's the case, and have that there. Other questions in the chat room. Luke says, I'll watch your videos in 2016, 2017 to pass my Network Plus, which I would not have been able to do without you. I'm now a 4+ year experienced infrastructure engineer in the UK. See, it does happen. There are paths into the world of networking. Network Plus is a great jumping off point. And I think it's a great way to kind of build your knowledge of the fundamentals that you can then use to be very specific about where you may want to go with networking. So a perfect example, Luke, and congratulations to you on getting your Network Plus certification and then just using that to move into the industry and move up in the industry. And if you're like me, I loved the time when I was doing network administration, network troubleshooting, working with packets. The networking side of things was really a great place to get into and work with technology. And I love it. So I think you're probably having a blast. If you're now as an infrastructure engineer in the UK, you're probably having a fantastic time with this. Eventually, I'll have to talk sometime, tell the story yet again, sometime of being locked in a large bank in Scotland. I was locked in their data center. Not going to say what bank it was, but I was in their data center in Scotland and got locked into one of the rooms, into one of the data center rooms. You know, it has this automated door that you have to go in. You have to show your badge. You have to do a biometric scan. It's a revolving door. You have one person at a time. You get into the room, and then we couldn't get out. There's a great story there. Maybe I'll wait to tell the story, but that's one that eventually, as a network administrator, infrastructure engineer, you may find yourself in odd situations. That was certainly an odd one. That it turns out had nothing to do with the network. Question also, I was reading the 007 study guide yesterday, came across a topic where they mention a crossover cable between hubs. Yeah, that's certainly one way to connect hubs. First, you have to find a hub. So I'm not sure how this will happen. You not only have to find one hub, you have to find two hubs. I don't know where you're going to do this, but let's say you rewound 20 years and you found two hubs. Yes, you would connect them with a crossover cable. And that is not the same thing as a trunk. No, that is just a way to connect those two devices together. Very similar to connect your computer to a switch and you have connectivity. You connect two hubs to each other with a crossover cable, and now they have connectivity. That's all it does. It extends the length of the network and gives you some more ports to work with. That's all that does. Those crossover cables are pretty useful. We're slowly evolving away from crossover cables. And in fact, one of the most recent Ethernet standards, we're talking, I don't know if it's the 10 gig standard or the 40 gig standard. I want to say it's the 40 gig standard. Mentions or removes the requirement, in fact, forbids the use of crossover cables. You don't use crossover cables with that particular standard any longer. They've now managed to put all of the electronics for crossover within the Ethernet equipment itself and set it up so that it will automatically cross over if it needs to. And the standards at that point specifically tell you you are not allowed to use a physical crossover cable any longer. Now, it's going to be obviously, I don't know, eons before we ever get rid of everything and finally move to that point. But someday, when we are all gone, the world will not need a crossover cable on an Ethernet network. Or maybe it will. Someone will still have a 10 megabit hub somewhere, and they will still need this. Or Cisco will continue to teach crossover, very similar to them always teaching the IP model, which nobody uses. So there may be that case. You may still find us still talking about this in our training classes many, many years from now, and work with those. I don't know. Maybe not. Eventually, we'll get to that point. Whenever I start looking at crossover, there's in the 008, I do this too, is I start really spelling out, here's the devices that would talk to each other with a crossover cable. Always a good thing to know. In fact, you should always be able to pick up an Ethernet cable. I was looking to see if I have one handy. I don't. Pick up an Ethernet cable, put the two connectors next to each other, and you should be able to tell whether that's a crossover cable or not, because that may be pretty important. There was recently someone who said, well, these days, a gigabit connection has the auto MDIX capability. It can automatically tell if a device needs to be crossed over. It's practically automatic these days. Why are we even talking about crossover? The answer is that it still matters a bit. Although auto MDIX is practically foolproof, it works almost every time. I have run across certain Ethernet chipsets that do not work well due to a firmware bug. They don't work well when you use a straight through connecting two like devices and have it auto MDIX. Turns out the performance is decreased versus using an actual wired crossover cable. Now, that's a pretty unusual corner case. You would almost never run into that. But as it turns out, when you work in networking, you run into a lot of corner cases all the time because you've got all of this different equipment. You're connecting up equipment from different manufacturers. All of those manufacturers are using different types of firmware, and you'll often run into these weird interoperability problems that tell you, in fact, this was in the release notes of this product that said, we know you can connect this with auto MDIX. We know it looks like it works when it goes auto MDIX, and it sure seems like it works, except you're going to have performance problems. Don't use a straight through, use a crossover cable. And I thought that was remarkable, but you run into those. This is the nature of how it works. You run into this all the time. In the chat room, Hector asks, what advice would I give to a first-timer who would like to take on this exam, or really any of the CompTIA exams? What I would tell you to do is first and foremost, get the exam objectives. So many people have come to my site after taking the exam and failing, and they say, I saw stuff on this exam I was not ready for. They had this thing on there called spanning tree protocol. I was not ready for that. What is that? I said, well, that's listed in the exam objectives. Did you look at the objectives? And they said, well, no, I just thought that was sort of a summary, kind of an overview of the exam. And they had no idea that it was effectively a list of everything you need to know before you walk into the exam room. So let's look at that. Let's pull up the exam objectives of the N10-008 exam. I think this is a relatively recent version. This is version 3 of the exam objectives. You can see on this list, I'm going to look at section 1.3. Summarize the types of cables and connectors and explain which is the appropriate type for a solution. Well, there's copper, which includes twisted pair, specifically Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a, Cat7, Cat8. You need to know coaxial, or RG6 specifically. You need to know twin axial. You need to understand the termination standards, such as the TIA EIA 568A. Yes, I know that's a little outdated. And 568B. There is no TIA EIA anymore, but we still say it. We're so used to saying it. Fiber types, single mode, multi-mode. Connector types, LC, ST, SC, MT, RJ, APC, UPC, RJ11. And then there's a whole nother column. And then there's a whole nother column of all the others. That's just one section of one domain in an exam with multiple domains. The detail in these exam objectives is remarkable. And then if you go all the way to the end, there's an entire acronym list, pages of acronyms, well, 2 pages of acronyms. And then if you want to set up your own lab, they even give you a hardware and software list to set up your own lab. Lots of detail here. So if you don't have this document, go to the N10-008 exam page on CompTIA, or just hunt for CompTIA exam objectives. Download this. It's all in there. It's all free and incredibly useful. These exam objectives are the ultimate. I use the exam objectives before I start building the first video. I have all of these objectives in front of me, and I use them as a checklist when I'm building the videos. That way I'm sure that everything in there is all going to match exactly what you need to know for the exam. So it's pretty important on my side too. So make sure you have them. They tell you everything. If there's a section of this you don't know, if you go through the exam objectives and you think, oh, I don't know that very well, that's what you should circle. That's what you should highlight and go back and make sure you know those topics. Very, very useful. Make sure you're familiar with those. In the chat room, Genesis asks, just passed my A+ Core 1 and Core 2 on Monday. You passed both of them in one day? First, I need to know more. Is that what you did? Because that's good job on passing both of them, period, much less on one day. He says, thanks to your videos, practice tests, and course notes, would I recommend Network Plus or Security Plus next? My employer is letting me decide which to get next. That doesn't even make sense. I guess the employer's happy with either. I guess they're equally happy with you being certified for either one of those, which doesn't help when you hear my answer anyway, because the determination on what certification you get is really based on what you're going to do with it. So are you planning to get, in this case, your employer's already said, take Network Plus, Security Plus. We don't care. We think both of them are equally valuable. Okay, well, there's at least, that's an easy one. Take whichever one you'd like because you don't lose it either way. But you might want to look at a bigger picture. You may not be at this employer the rest of your life. Very rarely do we stay at one place more than a few years, at least in IT. We tend to move from company to company to company. You may want to look at the other companies in your area. Just saying, not saying you have to leave tomorrow, but maybe years from now when you decide to dip your toe into the water to see what are other people paying out there for a higher level job, you may find that a lot of employers in your area are asking for one of these. You may find that all the employers are asking for Network Plus. You may find in your particular area that all your employers tend to be asking for Security Plus. So that might cause you to make a decision either way. So even though it doesn't mean anything in the short term, there might be a more valuable longer term perspective you need to think about. So think through that. Think about not just your current situation, but if you had tomorrow, if you had to go out to another company, what would they want you to have? All of these are good things to know. Or you may not care. And either way, then you just choose whichever one you like. But you asked the question, so I don't think that's the case. I think you are trying to figure out, is there an advantage or disadvantage to taking either one of those? And there may not be in the short term, but there may certainly be in the longer term. So have a look at what all the other employers in your area are doing. Adrian in the chat room with a $10 super chat. Adrian writes, thank you, Professor Messer, for all you do. Passed Network Plus last month, studied with your videos and study groups. Congratulations on your Network Plus certification. I'd love to know, Adrian, did you take the 007 and 008 and why? So I'd love to know more about that as well with those. As we're waiting on that answer, over to Genesis says, I took both exams on Monday. Wow. Both A+ exams at one time. Did you sleep at all? That's my next question. It was my first time with exams. I'm planning on moving into cybersecurity and into pen testing. There are certainly jobs out there for penetration testing. It is a very valuable skill to have. It is a very narrow niche of the security world, of the IT security world. Did I ever in my travels run into someone who exclusively did pen testing? I did very rarely. Very rarely did I run into some. Now, those jobs are out there, absolutely. Those jobs are in the segment. They're important jobs to have, but it's a very narrow segment. I would recommend, if you want to get into penetration testing, that you first get the IT security fundamentals, that you understand the networking part, that you understand the security fundamentals, that you understand the nuances of policy and procedure, that you of course have worked through the process of securing a network, securing devices. You know how to secure them, then you know how to protect them, and ultimately you know how to attack them, which is really what pen testing is. It is someone who is attacking systems for money, which is great, legitimately. What could be more fun? It's certainly an appealing, it's a sexy part of security is I'm going to be a pen tester. And you very well may, because it does have that allure. And when you watch a movie, you hear about security, you're hearing about the pen testers, you're hearing about the hackers, and the pen testers are blocking the hackers. And there's a whole world of that out there. But it is not the most common. And in fact, it may not even be the most profitable. From a salary perspective, you may find there are more options available to you in just generic IT security. Someone who is managing large security implementations, maybe you are working on designing and implementing reporting in a SIM. Maybe you're in charge of the next generation firewalls. Maybe your role is specific to proximity monitoring and being able to identify when people come close to a computer for access control. You see that a lot in hospitals and other places. That there are different skills for security that can be used broadly across many different organizations. There are many, many, many more jobs out there for an IT security professional, sort of the generic IT security person or engineer, than there is for someone who's very niche. But those niches are out there, and those niches do pay pretty well. I would say that if you're working towards those particular goals, then if you were to choose from between Network Plus and Security Plus, then Security Plus is where you would go. That makes sense to me. Although, of course, and I've said this many times and it hasn't changed, knowing or understanding or working in IT security requires a expert level knowledge in networking. You really need to understand the networking side of things very, very well. You need to be able to design and troubleshoot large scale, industrial, large corporate implementations of networks to be able to properly design security systems. There's just so much networking on the IT security side that really being able to, I guess, really understand the nuances of networking come into play. Well, we'll take one example. Let's look at someone who is working on implementing a IPsec tunnel between your site and a remote location. That's a security role. You're building up a tunnel between firewalls. There is, when you do that, there's a routing component to it. How do you route the traffic across the tunnel to the remote site? There is an IP subnetting aspect to that, because you've got multiple subnets you're dealing with in between. You've got implementations or interactions with other networking equipment. So you've got a firewall. The firewall is probably being handed off to a switch, which probably then hands off to a router. So all of these components all have to work together. You probably are using multiple firewalls for redundancy. How does that affect the IPsec tunnel when one firewall fails over to the other? If you're running a primary standby type scenario, all those are really networking questions. None of those are really security questions, but they were all about building an IPsec tunnel. So you effectively are sort of a next level network engineer when you start applying these security principles onto the network. So I think that's another thing to consider, is that you can't just jump into security. You kind of need to build the foundation first, and then you'll be a shoo-in on the security side. I think it's pretty useful. Other questions in the chat room. There's an easy one. How do I get into the Discord? Go to professormesser.com/Discord. I try to do as many of those as possible. So if you're trying to find something, you can probably find it by typing professormesser.com/ and then you'll get there for all of those. In the chat room, Grimley asks, I'm currently going through the A+ Core 1 videos. Thanks so much. I know you could take the test through a testing center. Is there a way to do it online as well? There is. You can choose either one of those. I think my stance on which one I would choose right now hasn't changed. If you have the ability to go to a testing center to take your exam, I think that is a much higher percentage of passing, of getting through it without any problems anyway, if not passing. One of the challenges with taking the exam online and at home is that it has to be proctored remotely, and that adds a level of complexity and of anxiety that I am unhappy with. I do not want that in my life. First, you have to have the exact type of seating arrangement set up. You can have one system with one monitor, nothing on your desk, in an environment that's quiet, that no one else can walk into, and you are closely monitored during the exam. And there have been cases where one proctor starts the exam, says everything's great, and then 5 minutes into the exam, a different proctor shows up and says, wait, this whole system is not set up right. I'm failing you. Nope, that's it. You're gone. You're going to have to talk to support to figure out what to do next. Sort of pointless, but it's sort of the way they work online. Other people have gone through an online. They've gone through the entire exam, not had a problem. So your mileage is going to vary a little bit online. Testing centers tend to be much better with a common experience. You check in, you provide your ID, they take your picture, you give them everything in your pockets, they put it in a locker, they give you a sheet of paper and something to write with, they take you to a room, they sit you down, that's it. And you just work on your exam. When you're done, you click finish, you get up, you walk out, collect your things, and you're on your way. There's never a chance, or I've never heard of someone running into the room and saying, all right, I've just arbitrarily decided that you may no longer take this exam anymore. I'm failing you and you can leave now. That just doesn't happen because the environment is so closed in. It is already secure. They are watching you through cameras. So that's one of those that gets, to me, it gets rid of a level of anxiety, a level of stress that I don't need when I'm taking a certification exam. I'm already stressed. I'm already got the anxiety level up here. It's already bad for me. I hate taking exams. I do not do well with exams. So I have to have all kinds of little tricks and little things I do to kind of settle down and get into the exam. And it's difficult if I add on to that more things that can go wrong. That's just sitting in the back of my head. They could cancel this thing at any second. I got to make sure I keep my eyes on the screen because if I just barely look to the side, they could fail me. I need to not make sure I don't say anything because if they hear me say something, they could fail me. I hope nobody walks into the room because if somebody walks into the room, they could fail me. I don't need that in my life. I just need a much simpler, I just need to take a test and get out. So that's why for me, going to a testing center works fine. In the chat room, this person saying, yep, they said I was too far from the camera. 5 minutes later, they said I was too close to the camera. What's the deal? I don't even understand. So yes, these things happen. But if you live an hour away from a testing center or more, or you're in an environment where you're just not comfortable going to the testing centers in your area yet, online is a fabulous option. At least you can sit at home on your own system, work on this exam, and as long as you don't run into one of this weirdness with the proctors, you're okay. Now, the people that have run into problem proctors and they have just arbitrarily canceled your exam right in the middle, in practically every scenario that I've read, they were able to contact the support line. Support line was able to reschedule them, and they were able to take it again. So I don't know anybody that sort of lost their chance or their money. There have been cases, though. There have been a couple of cases where people, they just were failed, and that was it. Because they are recording this. They're keeping a copy of this. They go back and refer to these things when you're done. So, yes, that is the case. It's up to you which one makes sense for you. Everybody's a little different. Find the one that works best for you, and I think you'll do fine. Also in the chat room, along those same lines, when you're at a testing center, they give you a piece of paper. Usually it's a laminated sheet and a whiteboard marker that usually has a bad tip on it. And if you tried to use it, you wouldn't be able to read anything anyway. I usually even bring my own whiteboard marker and get them to okay it when I walk in the door, just because I like something that's fine tip. Because if I'm writing something down, the idea, the supposition, is that at some point I will need to read that. And those markers they give you at the testing center, for some reason, are made for writing, but not made for reading. Now, there is online, you don't get a piece of paper. In fact, they don't let you have a piece of paper on your desk. They tell you to remove all the paper. But there is online a whiteboard you can use. If you go to OnView Whiteboard, OnView is one word, ONVUE. Go to your favorite search engine, go to OnView Whiteboard. You will see it tells you there's a whiteboard that you can use. In fact, on the screen, they give you a version of the whiteboard so you can type in, things before the exam starts. What am I typing? 32, 16, 8. 421. There we go. So I got my whiteboard. You can type things in here so that you could category 5, category 6. You can put anything else that you'd like in this list. And there's your whiteboard that you can use for the exam. So it's almost like having something you can write on, but you're just typing on it instead of writing on it. This is just a page on the Pearson VUE website. Type in OnView Whiteboard, and you'll be able to find this page. So you can get accustomed to using that before you start your online exam. That's the worst time to try to troubleshoot using something. So that nice whiteboard test practice is right there on the screen. Just scroll down and you'll be able to use the whiteboard that's there. Very useful. Everything's very useful, apparently. Don't know if you noticed that. The chat room, Gans has been watching your Security Plus videos in preparation for my exam next month. Thanks so much for watching the exams. How many practice tests do you advise I go through before I actually take the exam? I would say all of them. Every exam, every practice exam in the world is what I would advise. Practice exams are so useful. Good practice exams are so useful. Maybe not every exam in the world. Some exams, not so much. But a good quality set of practice exams can be very valuable, not just for qualifying that you know something, but I find practice exams perhaps are even more valuable when you get a question wrong, because it points out something you don't know yet, and it gives you a chance to study up on that topic. This is what I try to do in my practice exams book for Security Plus, where I give you the question, I tell you what the answer is, I tell you why it's the right answer, but then I go through every wrong answer and I tell you why all of the wrong answers were wrong, because I'm always getting questions wrong on these exams. And I want to know, why did I get that question wrong? Plus, knowing why something is wrong is perhaps more of a learning opportunity than if you get a question right. If you get a question right, you don't even think about it again. In fact, you don't even think about the other answers. But as it turns out, even if you get a question right on my practice exams, I tell you, go ahead and read the wrong ones, because your actual exam might be a topic that's in the wrong list. And knowing the wrong answers might be able to get a question right on the actual exam. So absolutely, go through as many as you possibly can. Not all practice exams are equal. Some are just bad. There's some bad practice exams out there. And I know this because people email me questions from bad exams and they say, hey, I don't understand this question. it seems to be contradictory, or the answers don't seem to be different answers they're answering a question that wasn't asked. There are a lot of weird things going on there. And I tell people, yeah, there's some bad questions, but I can't really be the person to explain that this is a poorly written question and why. All I can really do is tell somebody, you need to go back to the people that wrote this, get them to decipher it. I can't. I would spend all of my time every day trying to parse out why a bad question is bad, because there are just so many of them. So that's why I mentioned that, and being able to work through it. Mac in the chat room asking about CECs. I'm not sure what you're asking about, Mac. Give me more detail about what you'd like to know about that. I don't recognize the acronym. Do you mean CEUs? Maybe that's what you're referring to. Let me know. We can step through that. Do I ever speak at IT events? Not much anymore. In my past lives, I've been a systems engineer. I've been a company spokesperson. I've literally had a job where I would get on a plane, fly to an event, speak at the event, go to the airport, and fly to another event and speak at that event. And that's just what I did every day of the week, is I would just speak at events. I don't do much of that any longer. I do speak at events. This is one of them. Hi, I'm Professor Messer, and I'm here to speak at your event. This event is the Network Plus Study Group Aftershow. So in a way, yes, I do speak at IT events. I just happen to make them. I do my own IT events. Otherwise, no, I'm not speaking at other IT events. I'm good. I speak enough at these live streams. I don't need to go to an event and speak at an IT event. I am good. Thank you so much. Max says, continuing education, they're not credits, they're units. It's the same thing, isn't it? Max, it's the same thing. You're absolutely right, Max. It's the same thing. CompTIA calls them CEUs, continuing education units. When you earn your certification, it's good for 3 years. The second you are past that exam, 3 years, you're locked in. And for most people, at 2 years and 11 and a half months, they suddenly realize, oh, wait, my certification expires in 2 weeks. I need to keep the certification. What do I do? Well, there's a number of things you can do. You can take a higher level certification exam from CompTIA. You can take a higher level exam from a third party. You can take CompTIA's CertMaster CE online training program to earn the CEUs you need to renew your certification. Or you can collect individual continuing education units. And those credits are used you pull those together from different places. So you can earn them by going to a training class. You can earn them by writing a blog. You can earn them by taking a training like this on a webinar. There's different things you have to do to be able to earn those CEUs. And you collect for Network Plus, I think you have to earn 30 of those. For Security Plus, you have to earn 50. For Network Plus, I think it's, or A Plus, I think it's 20. You have to earn a certain number of those CEUs, a certain number of units, to be able to renew your certification. So it's a little bit longer process than maybe taking some of those other things. I have a video on how to renew your CompTIA certification in just a few hours. It talks about each one of those scenarios, the advantages, the disadvantages, and it really talks about the CertMaster CE, which is one product you purchase from CompTIA. It is an online training program. You can step through it in a number of hours, and when you complete it, it gives you all of the CEUs you need to renew. That's it. You don't have to pay extra. You don't have to pay registration fees. You don't have to pay CEU fees. You just pay for the CertMaster CE, and you're renewed. That's it. And it's different costs on the CompTIA website. You want to Google CertMaster CE. That's the name of the product. And that's the easy way. That's the easy button for renewing. In most cases, easy button. You can earn webinar category CEUs by watching this live or watching or listening to a replay or a podcast. So anytime I mention this, whether you are watching in real time or whether you are watching a replay from years ago, I will still give you a CEU email on that. So either way, you can really only earn so many webinar category CEUs during that 3-year period. So for Security Plus, for example, I need 30 CEUs. 5 of them can be webinars. That's it. So you got to find the other 45. I guess there's 50 total you need. The other 45 CEUs have to come from some other category or series of categories. So there's a whole section on the CompTIA website you can read for quite some time on renewing your certification. It's involved. And taking a higher level certification can renew a lower level certification. There's a whole list on the CompTIA website that gives you the hierarchy. So you can see some of them that you think would renew don't. And some that you were not expecting do. So you have to look at CompTIA's website for that. I don't make that. I don't make those decisions, thankfully. Question in the chat room. This is one that does come up from time to time. Network engineering, do you need to learn a programming language like Python or not? First, I recognized that we tend to put the term programming as a very broad category that means you're writing some type of script or code. If you're putting something down that is interpreted or compiled, technically speaking, that's programming. But I just don't put, I like to tell people very clearly that if you're working in information technology, that you do not need to know how to do what people traditionally think of as coding. And in my world, coding means I'm writing an application that will perform a series of functions for me, like an app for your phone, like an app in a browser, like a standalone executable in Windows or Mac OS. To me, that's programming. The skill that you need as a network administrator, as a systems administrator, as a security professional is automation or scripting is what you need to know. And those are very, very important skills to have. In fact, they are career-making skills. You will be surprised when you become well-versed in Python or PowerShell. Those are the two I'll give you right now. If you know how to make those dance, if you can make PowerShell or Python do anything you want it to do, then you will be able to take any job you would like. That's how powerful those are. The automation and the scripting behind those allows you to do things that other people simply can't who don't have those skills. So if you are wanting to, you're in networking, you think I need to take this to the next level, I need to get a better job, I need to get a different job, I want to move into security, then study everything you can about Python, study everything you can about PowerShell. They really are game changers. So make sure that you're familiar with them. What you don't need to know, you do not need to know how to develop an application in C++. You do not need to know how to customize a browser page using JavaScript. You do not need to know how to build an Android app using Java. That is a programming task. That is you building an app. You do not need to know how to build an app. What you need to know is how to Python something and how to PowerShell something. That's not actually, I'm not using those right, but you know what I'm saying. That is why PowerShell and Python are incredibly valuable. On the networking side and the cloud side, probably leans more Python. Obviously, on the Microsoft management side, leans more PowerShell. I don't know if there's any certifications for that. I don't think there is. That'd be very useful, though, to have some type of certification for those. But it's certainly the case. That is why if you are if you want to do application development, then you'll need a different set of skills really focusing on application development and programming. But that is not where IT fits. IT is this Venn diagram, this circle of the Venn diagram. Programming, or I would say computer science, if you want to put that in a term, computer science is its own circle on the Venn diagram. And if you were to put them together, they barely, if at all, meet in the middle. There's just not a lot of overlap. That's why when you walk in pretty much any organization, there's a group of people doing IT. There is a completely different group of people doing application development. And those are not even close to each other in what they're doing. There has been a push in recent years to somehow push those circles together a little tighter so there's more overlap in the middle. It was a bad idea when they thought about it. Nobody bought into that it was a bad idea. They just thought, no, we'll push this together and we'll put programmers in charge of rolling out applications. Didn't work out so well, did it? Did not happen the way they were expecting. We've now sort of adjusted our focus a bit on what we really think DevOps is, what we really think. It's not even DevOps anymore. We're sort of leaning more towards cloud ops or just ops. We're sort of moving the other direction, it seems now. That the whole DevOps thing did not seem to take off the way people were expecting. There was this mentality, I think, and there still remains some of this in the world. Certainly, if you ask my parents and say, what do you do? I does some programming thing with the computer. I don't know. It's a programming. And even if you talk to anyone in politics, which first, don't do that. Don't talk to anybody who's involved in politics. Secondly, if you talk to someone involved in politics, they love to talk about teaching everyone to code because everyone needs to code. I don't know why they think that. They think everybody needs to learn how to code. That's not true. Not everybody needs to learn how to code. Not everybody needs to know how to do anything. Everybody's an individual. So having everybody learning to code doesn't help anyone. Knowing skills around automation and scripting are valuable for IT. Knowing skills around C++, knowing skills around JavaScript, Java are great for computer science. And generally speaking, if you're someone who is not in computer science and you're not in IT, you probably don't need any of those. You don't need to know how to code. It doesn't really help you. And it's not just Google. Everybody, I think it's a great thing for the people that need to learn how to code. Then yes, there needs to be resources for those folks. For those of us on this live stream, for those of us who are in IT, for those of us that want to be a system administrator, network administrator, security professional, and other parts of IT, databases, data centers, email, cloud. You don't need to know how to build an app. You do not. You will not be building any apps, so it's not going to help you. Now, if you want to do that on the side, you want to make your own apps for something else, that's great, but it's not really going to interact or have any impact on what you do day to day for this. So don't worry so much about programming, but absolutely spend some time learning Python. Absolutely spend some time learning PowerShell. It will return to you in spades. It will be so valuable really for the rest of your career. That's how valuable those skills are. So if I had to really nudge somebody in a direction who had an interest in automation or coding or making things work automatically, Python, PowerShell, go do it. I think I've made my point. Yes, and the other people are saying, yeah, everybody on Twitter says I need to learn how to code. Everybody in politics says I need to learn how to code. Everybody at Google says I need to learn how to code. No. Now, if you want to be a programmer at Google, you need to learn how to code. If you want to be a programmer that builds applications, you need to learn how to code. But IT does none of those things. So that's why. IT is completely separated from that. Ironically, it seems, and this is probably where this comes from, if you go to a four-year college, go to a state university, and looking at a four-year degree in computer science, it's all coding. I mean, it's just tons of coding. plenty of coding. Coding. They loved code. Let's do some code. But interestingly enough, those same universities, those same colleges, those same places don't have or have a limited number of courses dealing with information technology. What about somebody who needs to learn how to network? What about somebody who needs to manage operating systems? What about somebody who needs to understand security at the IT level? That's training. Universities teach. Universities do not train. Do not ask a university to train. They will look down their nose at you. Oh, we're not going to train you. We are a university. We are a place of higher learning. So therefore, you don't need to know Windows. You don't need to know networking. Now that is changing a little bit. I think the times they are changing. I think for many places, and I've seen some really good examples of this with four-year degrees and universities and colleges, you will find that diamond in the rough. You'll find that little gold nugget of a university or college that actually does have a very good information technology program. It's just taking a very long time for them to come around and understand there's more to IT than training. I don't even understand why they think that way, but they do. And I'm fine with that for now, because if they all trained, while they all concentrate on IT, maybe all of you wouldn't be here. So selfishly, I'm fine with that. Well, I really would like them to convert over, though, to what we're doing out here in the world. I think that would be great. And it's a fun thing to think about, too, that you could go and get an actual degree on these topics. Can you imagine spending every day in a class doing this type of thing, building out some networks, working with security, understanding how to stop threats, understanding how to connect these systems together, how to build massive networks, how to manage them? I think it would be phenomenal. And instead, we end up doing this OTJ on the job, which is just sad. It isn't efficient. It's not effective. It puts us behind the eight ball. We're relying on people that come before us to perhaps give us some of the nuggets of information they've learned along the way. It just doesn't make sense, but that's where we are. So I'll just do the best I can at giving you all the information I know. And we can use that to now get a job and get a better job. And maybe we don't need the universities for that. Go get your four-year degree in something similar. Go get it in business. Go get it in technology, maybe an engineering degree, although that might be overkill. And then use that to be able to get the job you want along with these skills. I think it's a combination anyway, isn't it? So layer them all together, go out and do your best. I think that's the real important part of that. I see this as well. Timothy in the chat room mentions major universities jumping on the boot camp model. It's a boot camp. I saw one recently in my area. They were offering a cybersecurity boot camp. Took place over 3 months. You go 3 times a week. Like, that's not boot camp. That's class. What are you talking about? That's a course in cybersecurity. It's not a boot camp. When I hear boot camp, I think somebody who's doing something, they're there for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but mostly a week. And that the boot camp, they kind of shove the information in you and hope that you're going to be able to somehow remember it and reiterate that on the way out. But when I'm seeing that it's so appealing, though, the term boot camp has this appeal from a marketing perspective, that I'm seeing more people offer it, but it's not a boot camp. It's a class, just a normal class that they're calling a boot camp. No, it's our boot camp. No, it's a class. Or maybe they think it's not good enough to be called a class because they're training you in something. I will never understand educators. I say this as an educator. I will never understand the educators, not the universities. And that's kind of the difficult thing, isn't it? That if you go out in the world and you see how it's done, you want to be able to get people prepared with what you have seen. And it is sometimes challenging and frustrating not to see a place where people can be prepared for that. I think what we really should tell them is, there's money in this, and then maybe they'll come around. They'll figure it out. 4-year degree is expensive. Maybe they feel like you need to get an engineering degree instead of something relating to IT. Although I will tell you, I worked with a lot of people in IT as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company. I was probably financially, my salary was probably better than someone who had an engineering degree, in some cases, a medical degree. IT has amazing upward mobility. So part of my frustration with not getting people trained is I wish we could train more people so they would be more successful. It's all about being successful and getting what you want in your life, being able to get a job or get a better job to make things better for yourself and your family. Ultimately, that's what we're here for. So if we can find a way to do that and find a way that sort of fills in the gaps where everybody else is not doing that, then we're in good shape. That's what I want to see. And that's where we'll focus on. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to start. We made it through a couple of and a half hours of Network Plus Study Group today. Thanks for joining us. We do one of these every month. Feel free to check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar and find out when the next event is going to be. We'd love to have you come back so we can do some more of this. We do another one of these next week. Come back next Wednesday. We do a Security Plus Study Group. We'd love to have you come back. I have a whole new set of questions. We'll run through our after show again. We'll answer questions from the chat room. It's always fun. It's never a dull moment and something I always enjoy. Love to do these live streams. We're so glad you're able to join us. Come back for the next one. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.